I think at my heart, I'm a scientist, and and in the world of AI now, you've got to question everything. If someone has shiny AI stuff in their product, don't be afraid to ask them, what prompts did you use? How does it work? What model does it use? Get to the root of it. I think there's a lot of magic stuff that can be under we have AI. I think you really need to ask, how does it work? How exactly does it work? Show me the engine.
Welcome to another episode of Unfiltered by Empowered, the podcast where we have unedited conversation with educators from across the world. I'm your host Anshul Lau, and in our podcast, we have conversation with passionate educators to uncover the challenges, celebrate their successes, and inspire with real life stories from the front line of education. Today, we are joined by John, who leads research and development in digital learning at Hibernia College in Dublin, Ireland. We're thrilled to have him today to share his insight on how digital learning environment are evolving. John, welcome to Unfiltered by Empowered today's episode. To begin with, could you start? Basically, you can introduce yourself and tell a bit about yourself and your journey into the world of educational technology, please. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Anshul, for having me on the podcast. So my name is John Lenehan. I work for Hibernia College, and Hibernia College is a blended learning college based in Ireland, in the east of the country and the west. I'm based in the west, next stop New York, right on the coast. And Hibernia College was founded in the year 2000, but it was founded as a blended learning college from day one. So we knew that our students were going to be distributed, and we've been using online technologies right from the inception, and that's how all the structures within the college have been built. We've around 2,500 students, and our key programs are teacher training, postgraduate qualifications for primary and post-primary students, and also we have an undergraduate nursing course that started a few years ago. So my role within the college, I work in the digital learning department. I've been working in this space for over 20 years, and my current role is a research and technology lead within the digital learning department. And I am known as the Minister for the Future. No pressure there. But essentially, my role is an educational technologist, really with an eye on the future, as to go what's coming down the tracks, what other software or technology can we use to deliver our blended learning program, and everything that goes with that.
That's interesting. I think we need to know more about your Minister of Future title. Is it identified, recognized in your institution, or do you even use it widely?
It is not an official title by any means.
I think, but reflects your passion, I'm sure.
And well, always living in the future, trying to stay in the present, and yeah.
And when you mention yours is a blended learning college, can you elaborate on that? What it means by blended learning college? Do you still have mixed courses? Do you have provisions for like part-time staff member or part-time students to study? So what does it mean by blended learning, and to what extent do you use online modes of teaching in your courses?
Yes, so our flavor of blended learning is because of the types of courses we do, teaching and nursing. Of course, there's a work practice element to that to that as well. So the split is 50-50 online and 50-50 in person. And the 50-50, we'll say in person in real life, is done through work practice and also with face-to-face days, so conference days. So the college doesn't own any classrooms as such. We don't have any lecture halls or anything, but we will, depending on the makeup of the cohort, the location of the students throughout Ireland in a year, we have fortnightly or weekly lectures in various parts of the country in clusters that bring all the local students together, and they could be in any type of venue. It really changes from year to year. So we rent out premises for that purpose. And then for the blended learning part of it, because we don't have offices really, students don't come through our campus, they come through our digital campus.
Okay.
So we have Moodle at the heart of that, of our VLE, as our way to distribute on-demand content. We run every evening after school, I'll say after work. The students that do our teaching courses, it's a two-year master's program. They have to do it full time. It's full time. You can't really
Okay.
work. It's very demanding. So a lot of our webinars are done after 5 o'clock in the evening, for an hour or 2 hours. So as a student, you might have 2 webinars, maybe 2 evenings a week for an hour, maybe for assessment preparation. The digital learning team has, I think it's up to 35 at the 35 members at the moment, and that's
So that's a big team.
Yeah, a big mixture of multimedia designers, audiovisual designers, learning designers, myself and some other educational technologists, and a data researcher and a researcher. But we make all of our on-demand content ourselves. We have faculty in the college, we work with the faculty, we work with experts outside to build our own on-demand content, which most of it is built through H5P, Articulate Rise, other technologies that I'll mention later. And the webinars supplement the on-demand content that students get. So, in Moodle, what's happening next week? This range of on-demand content is available. You go away, you look at it, you read it, you study it, you interact with it, and then when it comes to face, that's when that type of work and knowledge is consolidated for the learner. So yeah, we don't have students on campus. They come through our digital portals completely, and that's how the bulk of our communication happens, and how their on-demand content gets delivered, and how their face-to-face days are organized. So quite a peculiar setup, I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. When you mention on-demand content, do you even seek feedback from the students on on-demand content particularly? And also, I'm curious to know who would be taking ownership of development of the content? Is it yourself, your team, or would it lie with the academic staff member to design the actual learning experience in the VLE? You mentioned Moodle particularly.
Yeah. So let's tackle the first question first. Yes, we do get feedback from students about both webinars and on-demand content. We've recently launched a feedback site specifically built. So we use a lot of Articulate Rise, and on the last screen of our Articulate Rise presentations, we have inserted a feedback form, a very simple form, kind of a 5-star rating form, with an option for a comment. So we made it very simple to use, and those forms are anonymous, so students can do their Articulate Rise object and then post the comment in the form, and then that comes back to a central site. And that central site is a very simple site. It's built in WordPress. It uses kind of it uses a premium forms plugin, so it's not a very high-tech solution. And I guess we've always had surveys. We've always surveyed students about on-demand content, but it always happened to be maybe a little bit disjointed. It might happen at the end of a module, and of course, the engagement rates are quite low. So based on some previous experience, my manager he says you need to get that form right at the end when the student has finished their on-demand content, right, and integrate it into the system. And I think we've always been reluctant to do that in the past, because if you add any type of dependency into Articulate Rise, then it's not SCORM compliant anymore. You can't repackage it for somewhere else. So that always prevented it. But I think we just said, look, we need to put the form in, because I think everybody builds on-demand content and they go, we want to reuse it here and we want to reuse it there. That's the ideal scenario, but it doesn't really happen that often. It hasn't happened that often for us without having to really repurpose the on-demand content for its specific application. So yes, we collect feedback from on-demand content through a simple WordPress and form site. I think we have about 2,000 items of feedback that have come back since January, which is all really good. Students are saying, this is too long. This is too complex. I didn't like this. Wonderful. And that feedback then, the main purpose is to complete that quality circle.
Okay.
You plan, you design, you develop, you evaluate. You want to get that
Yeah.
evaluation. So the information that comes back informs our learning designers. Are there any
Okay.
major problems with the content? What can we learn from the comments that came back? And it is also given to faculty. So faculty also run reports for their own departments, and it also helps faculty then understand successes or failures maybe with the on-demand content and address them at our face-to-face days.
Yeah.
So that leads me to your second question around who kind of signs off on the on-demand content. So we've been developing a system for as old as the colleges, for 20 years. And we feel we have a really robust quality system. And generally when courses are kind of when we start a new program or we're rebuilding a program, our internal faculty will write what will supply the content for the learning designers, or we'll work with external experts, and the learning designers will help the authors kind of get the content in a way that suits them, and also they receive the content. Sorry, they receive the content in a way that's kind of chunked and kind of uses all of the multimedia design principles kind of
Okay.
that the learning designers would use to produce successful learning content as much as possible. And that interchange then between faculty and the learning designer carries on throughout the entire system, right up until the end. And then it's signed off by faculty and program directors
Okay.
right at the end. So it's a really close and symbiotic relationship that we've developed over time.
Well, that's good to know that you have partnership and there is a particular levels of approvals as well before the content is released. I think when you mentioned about the feedback, I just want to ask, do you have other mechanism of capturing feedback? Like if you want to capture comprehensive feedback from students on any particular module or kind of content on demand. And also, if you can share an example with us where any feedback directly influenced a change in your VLE or the approach of that particular content.
Sure. Um, so let's look at sorry, what was your first question, Ansel?
First thing was that do you also have other mechanism of
Yes.
capturing feedback? Like if you want some to capture comprehensive feedback from students rather than ticking box or on 5-star rating, how do you capture that and how do you contact them in case you won't?
Yeah, I think the initial feedback attempts we've never had a centralized system before to do it. I think we've used kind of SurveyMonkey. I think there could have been a survey tool a long time
Yeah.
ago that is not in operation, an open source version. And I think for me, this was one of the problems that I see that we'd never had. Like we have Power BI and we have Microsoft Backbone, as a lot of colleges do, but and there are Microsoft Forms, but really to build some type of kinds of advanced forms, you need to work outside of that.
Yeah.
And so there are other surveys. I think they're used, SurveyMonkey could be used, other tools like that, but I'm really hoping that we can get a centralized system
Yeah.
where all that data ends up in the one place, which means it's easier to research in the future. And I was actually inspired by Digital Universities conference last year, I think where there was a talk on by John Hopkins University where they used Qualtrics
Okay.
to build touch points across the entire student experience and collect data all in the one system from application right through to graduation. And obviously we're a small college, we don't have the budget those guys do,
Yeah.
but it seemed like such a really clean and useful, really useful solution so that any staff can go in
Yeah.
and see feedback, because we find that here, if a survey is done, you may not know where the feedback is or where the survey is. So how can you feed it into the system? So we're trying to see how far we can go with this current system to allow all of
Okay.
the staff and team members in and faculty to be able to look at any feedback that they want to kind of focus them to be aware of student needs.
And even more importantly, how do you ensure that you're asking the right questions in that survey that leads to actionable insights?
We don't. I
Okay.
don't. I don't.
Yeah.
And because I guess when I look at the surveys, okay, so I did a training and development course, and there's a lot of evaluation
Yeah.
structure there, whether it's face to face or whether it's online, and you can ask a lot of questions. But the survey that we have for on-demand content is just very simple. It's a 5-star rating and it's a box.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think, good or bad. And I know that you could build more advanced surveys, but I
But
guess the
you
more the
then you
more
don't get
advanced it
much.
is, you don't get
Yeah.
the
Many
engagement.
responses even. Yes, absolutely. I think the
Yeah.
simpler it is, you get many people to be responding and actively participating. I think even I had similar experience when you have comprehensive feedback, not you'll have 10% or lower percentage kind of participants getting involved with responding to the surveys. And also, I would like to know that in your experience, what are the common challenges that you have faced with particularly supporting users with Moodle and VLEs in particular, and how have you addressed these issues?
Yeah. So this is quite this is linked to our previous podcast on user-centered design
Okay.
that I did, and as I said, I've been involved in this space in 20 years, and I guess as a small college like ourselves, with such a dependence for online systems, Moodle has been the center. And before Moodle, I think we used some sort of a .NET Nuke CMS. Now we switched to Moodle because the .NET, Moodle provides a lot of other functionality, whether it's as managing students in cohorts, assessments, showing them content and stuff like that. And up to maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I think a major complaint you would have always seen at Moodle conferences, and really for any open source technology, was that it just didn't look. It looked quite plain and generic.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of how open source content is developed. But I think that the effective interface has become really pronounced in the last 10 years, because when you have students that access huge platforms, Facebook, any type of Google sites, most of the massive platforms that draw them in, like they have multi-million, God knows, multi-billion dollar budgets,
Yeah.
really to design these interfaces. But then when they come to your college, and if your systems aren't up to scratch, they really think, oh, this is going back to
Yeah.
the Stone Age here. This is really bad. And I guess if you use Moodle, and I'm picking Moodle, but I'm sure there are lots of other systems that people use in at higher ed that would be similar to this. They're very expensive and very hard to customize. Um, Certainly, it's not something we can develop in-house with our team. We have a very basic developer resource, and we
Yeah.
we have external partners that host it, and they develop it for us. But it comes at a huge cost. And in the past, we've gone through all the process of having a good idea for changing the screen, specking
Mhm.
it all up, getting it priced, go to finance, and they say, "This is too dear, we're not doing it." But you know that it's going to make a big difference to the student.
Yeah.
So I guess one of the important things that we've done in the last 2 years, which we've had a lot of success, is that we have really sat down and had workshops to look at how we can improve what is the future of our online systems in 5 to 10 years. And out of that really was working with all of the groups, the staff, adjunct faculty, the students that use our systems, and
Yeah.
sitting down to talk to them about, look, what do you need? And we did that with students for Moodle. And as I said, we worked with external people to design that system. Um, when we got to adjunct faculty, which is the part I was involved in, um, again, we have 500 adjunct faculty all around the country who are teachers or nursing professionals that help in our programs. And as per our podcast, Moodle's brilliant for students. It really does do a good job for students. But when you're a staff member or adjunct faculty who
Okay.
come in to use the system, it's as I call it, it's the exit, it's the back door to the restaurant. You don't walk into the lobby. You're not welcomed on the way in. Actually, you're going in through the messy kitchen. And for us, that proved to be a really big problem for adjunct faculty, because we contracted them to work for, let's say, 50 hours, and they could spend 10 hours looking for stuff. looking for resources, how to get to their class or where
Yeah.
the on-demand content was, which means they didn't tend to come back in some cases, or they were really
Yeah.
frustrated. So in this case, as part of talking to adjunct faculty, we really have a user-centered design focus. So we go out, we talk to them, we interview them. What do
Okay.
you show me what you do? Show me what you're a tutor in whatever subject, and you have to log on to our system to do something. Maybe give a class, maybe set up an assessment, maybe correct an assessment. So you sit down, you get them on Zoom, you get them recording, let them show you their screen and go, show me what you do. And you can learn the myriad of ways people use your systems that you never even thought possible. But they'll also tell you about the time they spent and the difficulties they have. And in one particular project, a successful project in which we took different classes of adjunct faculty, we would take school placement tutors. I interviewed 5 of them. They all had the same problems. But that's great, isn't it? Like if you're in a small team in a college,
Yeah.
the problem you have is you can do this research. You can find out what their problems are, but how do you build it into your system? If you have Moodle, you can't unless you get someone to redesign the whole thing, which
Yeah.
causes lots of problems with updates. In our particular case, we use the power of WordPress and its new its new editor called Gutenberg, which is kind of a drag and drop, which how a lot of web interfaces are going now. Don't need
Okay.
to write the code for every interaction, whether it's a drop down or, you can just drag stuff and change some settings. So we were able to build screens. We were able to listen to the adjunct faculty, design screens to find out exactly what do you need today. I need a calendar that tells me what I'm doing next. Fine. Design the screen with the designer, and then you can get very close to it in WordPress, if not perfect. And that we couldn't do that before. You could do user-centered design. You could go out, find out what people needed, but how are you going to build it into your UI? But
Yeah.
really, for somebody with, I'll say, minimum to medium WordPress experience, familiarity. So now our adjunct faculty don't go to WordPress don't go to
Okay.
Moodle first.
Okay.
They go to a very special script. They log into our home.hiberniacollege.com, and if you're a placement tutor, you get a full list of the resources that you need, what you're doing next, and when you click those links, they bring you into the place in Moodle where you need to go. So you don't need to go through the 10 screens in Moodle to get there. You click one link on this interface, it brings you right to where you want to go. And of course, managing a system like that has an overhead because it's a white glove service really to the users, but it pays for itself.
Yeah.
Because now if you contract somebody for 50 hours, they're not spending 30 hours teaching and 20 hours looking for stuff. They're spending 50 hours teaching or assessing, which is what you want. So we've had a lot of success there. We've a lot of statistics on the site. Some of those pages are some of the most used pages on the site for any staff. But as I said, I think user-centered design is something everybody wants to do.
Yeah.
And they can do, but actually executing its findings is the challenge.
So I believe that you must be having a great deal of collaboration between your colleagues when you're working towards different courses. How do you work collaboratively just among your team members?
Well, I guess we have
Like different projects allocated, different area allocated. Does it work like that?
Well, there's 100 staff, just over 100 staff in the college, and everybody's accessible to everybody.
Okay.
I think. And I can't say all the work is divided properly between departments. There's always overlap. I don't know. It's in terms of collaboration, I think Hibernia College just itself has a strange ethos. I always felt at the beginning it kind of had a startup ethos, and I don't think it's ever finished. Like I think everybody's always striving for the absolute best that they can, and I think that's the key maybe to the openness and the energy behind collaboration. So like when it comes to, I guess, on that particular project that I talked about, maybe working with adjunct faculty, it's quite easy, and faculty are really easy to access to kind of approach and I suppose pitch ideas to. But And some ideas fail, some ideas get through. But in this
Absolutely.
particular case, I think anytime you want to improve the experience online, I think people will say, "How can I help you?" You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's helpful. And because even when you're talking into future, there is experimentation that's involved as well. You need to look into things so some ideas can be accepted or some can be rejected too. And I would like to know that what trends are you currently observing in virtual learning environment space, particularly that excites you the most?
well, you have to pull back the curtain of AI to see what existed before AI
Yeah,
arrived, because I'm not sure I remember anymore. Um,
yeah,
it really feels like every couple of years there's the next big thing. Well, certainly it seems to be amplified in education. And I think a few years back it was learning analytics and
yeah,
maybe blockchain. I can't remember what it was before that. Um, but learning analytics, everybody was talking about it, but it was really hard to execute because
yeah,
nobody's system was really ready, was able to do it. And I know we've had many attempts of trying to do it. Yes, we do work. We do collect a lot of data and do a lot of work in Power BI to feed information to faculty, but I don't think learning analytics ever worked in the way that we thought it would, and it was much more complex and nuanced. Um, and difficult even to identify useful metrics. So I guess everything seems to be kind of tainted now, like maybe AI can fix this,
yeah,
you know. Um,
yeah,
that seems to be it. Look, I think the trends that I'm seeing out there are, I think there's a lot of talk around AI tutors. People are trying to
yeah,
tweak models, large language models with some sort of pedagogical frameworks.
yeah,
Um, you know, I don't know what will come from that. I can only talk about my own experience.
yeah.
You can liaise with ChatGPT and ask it about a subject you're interested in, and ask it to ask you questions on it and
Yeah.
have a discussion. And it's very interesting. And if it gets
Even
to a
more specifically, has AI significantly impacted any of your project works or initiative that you have been working on?
Yeah, so we're currently we're exploring generative AI from two aspects
Yeah.
at the moment. Um, Number one, we're kind of running an internal project on its use for generating formative assessment questions. So formative assessment questions, typically from my experience, I think it's really easy to write the answer.
Yeah.
It's really easy to identify good questions. It's very easy to write the right answer, but it's always a challenge to write good distractors, you
Okay.
know? Um, and that's the bit that always annoys authors, and um, and that takes a long time to do. Such such as the result, we don't have a lot of formative questions, which I think are quite important in our on-demand content to really gauge how much people have, I'll say, learned, or how much they could remember at different points. So we've been running an experiment using an LLM to generate formative questions based on our content. So just
Okay.
focusing on specific content from online resources that we have, and from transcripts transcripts from videos, and from uh, present PowerPoint presentations. And all I can tell you, it's still in process, but we received our first tranche of formative assessment questions, and overwhelmingly the tutors have given it the thumbs up. They said these are good. Yeah, we have no problems with them. These are as good as we could do ourselves, we think. And so the current stage of that project is that the questions are now with our on-screen review team, who
Okay.
are going to look at the questions, and just look at how the language is presented in terms of their writing style guides. And we hope that the feedback that comes back from tutors, maybe on how the questions are asked and the language, will be fed back into the prompts that are used to generate the questions for next time. So that hoped we'll be getting closer to produce questions in a style and in a manner that we prefer.
Do
But
you have
that
any
has been
policy on
very
the use of
positive.
AI, particularly?
Yes, we have internal policies, and they're being developed at the same rate as everyone else, but
Okay.
any of the projects we're doing are trial based.
Okay.
They're only at the testing phase at the moment. Um, I think we have to explore our use cases, and
Yeah.
I think the policy grows around that then based on our experience and advice on testing use cases. You can write a generic policy now,
Yeah.
but it seems a bit, until we start testing it for specific use cases, and then that decision to decide to use it. I think some of the policy is definitely grown and built around that. So we're at a testing phase. We're evaluating it. There's a lot of things being said about generative AI, and we want to, like everyone, we test it for ourselves to see, can we use it? Can we
Yeah.
depend on it? But, for that particular charge, it looks good.
Yeah.
The
So what
second
sort of training do you provide for academic staff in preparing themselves in using generative AI? Or do you have any guidance for students that whether they can use it, to what extent they can use it, whether they have to provide any reference particularly, or any support do you even provide to students in using AI?
Yes, I'm not going to give advice to students. The only advice I will give to students are review your college's policies on the use of generative
Yeah.
AI, because everybody's going to take a slightly different approach. Yes, we have information that we give students about its use
Okay.
through our quality framework in the college. Absolutely. I'm not aware of. I'm sure there are projects that use it,
Okay.
lecturers that use it as part of assessment and stuff. I'm not familiar. Everything's changing so fast. I'm
Absolutely.
sure it will come out in how people are using it and what they're using it for.
Yeah.
Um, but with regards to staff, I mean, we're only learning about it ourselves on this project, and the external company that we work with, who have a lot of experience in using AI, I think one central tenet we've been saying from the beginning is that this can't be a black box. If we're going to work together, you have to share all of your secrets, every prompt, every model, everything with us. There can be no kind of stuff that's private, because the minute it's private, we can't verify it, we can't stand over it. So that has been our experience. We've been getting lots of information about the types of prompts done, the types of AI evaluations that are done on the questions before we even get them. And the company we're working with have been very transparent in this process. And then we're using that information to talk to staff about. So when any of the staff or faculty that are involved in this particular project, we're saying, ask any question. Let's get to the bottom of it. And we're doing our best to explain it, because obviously I'm not going to become a machine learning scientist.
Yeah.
And I have a basic understanding of transformers and neural networks. But I'm also an educational technologist who needs to know stuff about other
Yeah.
systems as well. So you can go so far. But either ways, every question needs to be answered in this process. Because, okay, AI, large language models are a black box to a certain degree. People are beginning to write scripts and develop methods to find out why an LLM came up with this solution. That's ongoing, and that will
Yeah.
be part of the process. But anything that we're doing, we have a policy. No, we're going to
Yeah.
explain everything. We're going to give the prompts that are used, what models were used, everything, because as I said, the black box thing doesn't work for anybody.
Yeah.
And that would reduce your trust in the system. And we're not going to do that anytime soon.
And what role do you envision for AI in the evolution of learning management system over the maybe next 5 years?
5 years.
Because you mentioned you are considered as a minister of future. I thought you would be having some vision or any anticipation that what do you think that how AI would evolve in terms of learning management system particularly? And do you use AI in your Moodle, utilizing Moodle at all?
Okay, so the easy one first. I don't think we're using AI in Moodle
Okay.
at the moment. I know that there's lots of tools for generating course content and stuff like that. So we're not using it at the moment. I think some of the AI projects that I'm working on now will definitely be used, maybe in some information production at some point, but we hope to kind of run lots of tests and validation before anything happens. But that's not to say AI isn't used in any of the LTI systems that come into Moodle, But I suppose our first two projects, which leads on to your second question, are, assessing it for the generation of formative questions based on our content. And the second then is the concept of an AI helper.
Okay.
And I really do see that as, you said 5 years, but
Yeah.
Ansel, 5 years is nothing in the world of e-learning. And I'll tell you a story. Like when I started at this college 20 years ago, we were doing webinars. They were called tutorials in the evening for students, and we were using software called, I think it was called AT&T Interwise, and the broadband connection in Ireland was disgraceful. It was good in cities, but like a lot of our students are remote, and they must have been listening to like on modem connections, 56K modem connections. And I would say the experience was pretty brutal. You'd have a slide, you'd have somebody talking, you could only hear their voice. Like it was like radio. But in our minds at that time, we thought we were in webinar land. But in actual fact, I don't think proper video webinars started until about 4 years ago when Zoom came along.
Yeah.
Zoom seemed to boom. I can see you, you can see me, and the quality's good, and the connection is stable. And I just think before Zoom, there were we did have Blackboard Ultra and things like that, but Zoom allowed you to show 20 people on screen, and really for people like us, where all our students are distributed over the country, this is brilliant. This really helped us engage a sense of community, and bridge the divide across the online.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I would even suggest that, or I think that COVID was a great push towards online learning or teaching approaches that just transitioned and how things evolved. I did not even hear the name of Teams earlier very much, but Teams evolved so much following the COVID period, particularly to assist the institutions in like adapting themselves to online teaching approaches. I think you absolutely rightly mentioned that things are evolving so rapidly and quickly now. While we are talking, AI would change in next year, and that would impact all our approaches, changes, or policy making as well at the institution. And with the
Exactly.
rise of AI, do you see AI technology superseding any of the adaptive learning systems, or do you think that they have a role in complementing each other at all?
Yeah. So why I told you about the story about it taking it so long.
Yeah.
It took 20 years for webinars to become good. And so I'm just wondering, will it be another 20-year jump? So the main thing I see AI being, the thing that sticks in my mind is the concept of an AI tutor.
Yeah.
Isn't that the most interesting thing? But will it take 20 years before it's good enough to be used? Now, you could say the pace of AI is so quick
Yeah.
now, that's not going to be the case. But these things, from my experience, take a long time
Yeah.
before they get over all the hurdles to be of use to people and trusted. But I guess there's a lot more investment going into this now. Well, I don't know. Is there more investment going into AI now than there was to kind of video telecommunications 20 years ago?
Yeah.
I'd say probably, because AI reaches into so many different industries and areas and has so many potential purposes, that are being born and sprung out. So I think this concept of an AI tutor, like you can do it today if you trust the information. You can liaise with this human speaking
Yeah.
thing computer, and have a conversation with it and ask it questions and get knowledge. And it really does provide a one-to-one tutor possibility. This
Yeah.
ideal Bloom's approach to teaching. You can't, one-to-one is the best. And if that can help you, if you're a child in a classroom full of 30 people, to get up to catch up with everybody else or to explore new ideas. But for me, really, the AI tutor offers the most promise for this within our field. And we are so our second project is to look at an AI helper. We have got as far as deciding a subject that we will use the AI helper for. We've decided that we have a course through our digital library called academic referencing and writing, I think it's called. And this has kind of grown to be a 100-page technical document. And
is it a pilot project?
No. Yes, the AI project is a pilot project.
Okay.
So we're looking to. So you have a choice. Humans don't like looking at 100-page technical documents. I'm guessing we're all the same. We'd prefer not to have to do that. So that's quite an onerous task for a student to do, just to learn technical skills. Now, that's in coordination with webinars. But we want to explore, basically, if we can get that 100-page document and let students interface with it, through an AI helper, through chat or by speech to get the information you need quicker. Then you don't have to look at the 100-page document. Wouldn't that be useful to humans? So we have the subject picked, and we're just going to start looking now at what type of infrastructure or whether we can build this ourselves. There are some companies that are really springing forward with this, based in the US, that you can upload your content to, and they really have the whole higher ed stuff managed. Select the cohort you want to show to, what age are these people or what level are they in, and it'll give it to them in the way that they need. And then it gives all the analytics in the background about how it's performing and what type of questions. So like this, using AI for that purpose for us will be beneficial, we assume. So we'll do a pilot, and it's going to be a multi-year pilot because it's really complex, but hopefully in the evidence we'll find out. And there's just so many aspects to it. I'm finding it difficult to actually do a project plan. But essentially, students need to see value in it. The last thing we want to do is ship off students to these types of systems. Actually, will this be better than what a person can do? Basically, because it's going to be available 24/7, and we know that our students don't follow traditional hours. They might log on at 2 a.m. when faculty are asleep. So at that time, so if they can
seek support, absolutely, that'll be really important,
out of hours,
essential for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some unexplored areas where you think AI could potentially transform the learning management systems platform altogether?
Yeah, I mean, I think probably, was it? Yeah, a year ago, I was kind of looking to go like, well, where can we go with our technology? What areas do we shine a light into maybe that we're not exploiting? I guess some of my software searches are limited to whatever conferences I go to and whatever Google brings back, in terms of new tech and word of mouth. So like my background is in science, and like I'm not a practicing teacher. I do some tutorials for students, sporadically, but I'm not a practicing teacher. So I was kind of going, look, what type of evidence-based teaching methods are out there, or learning methods. So like you can find information on like spaced learning, retrieval practice, interleaving, all of these ways of learning, teaching or learning, that benefit students. So I was kind of going, do we do this in any of our on-demand content? And the answer is we do some things, but not all of them. And I guess the problem with spaced learning, or interleaving, if you're a teacher, is that you really have to plan your curriculum. I guess interleaving might be easy to do. I know it's prevalent in some of our programs through a spiral curriculum, but I know the idea of kind of spaced learning is that, if you do an online lesson today, and the transience effect, if it's multimedia, is it going in one ear and out the other ear? If I can make that spring up in your interface tomorrow, and in a month's time, and in 6 months' time, and a year time, each time forcing you to retrieve it, is it going to make you more prepped for your exams? So I was concerned that although we try to make our articulate rise content as interactive as possible, are we doing enough? Because you're quite limited on a screen
Yeah.
as to what you can do, So looking from that, one of the things I noticed that if you wanted to do space practice or interleave practice, you kind of need to know what students know.
Yeah.
So how do we know what students know? So you either have formative questions at the end of your on-demand content, and then even if you're getting those questions, then do you have a robust analytics system? So can I look up Ansel and see how much he knows about a particular topic before an exam?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? But like, isn't that
Absolutely.
that's the
Absolutely.
promise of kind of online learning,
Yeah.
to go that you can maybe look for data points that you can't see in a classroom. Because I always say, if you're a teacher at a classroom and you say to all your students, now, does everyone understand that? They all nod,
Yeah.
because they want to go on their lunch. Where learning analytics theoretically or technically should be able to find some data of maybe strengths or weaknesses. So that brought me to kind of adaptive systems and that idea of subject mastery. And we've looked at systems that don't use AI and systems that do use AI. The AI systems are really cool, really complicated,
Yeah.
really over our heads in trying to grasp the entire blueprint of how they work. But it seems to me that a lot of these adaptive systems use the same type of idea. They kind of have a learning network. And in the AI-based system, we looked at, you have a subject, you break it up into concepts. Each concept is a node on a learning network,
Yeah.
and you look at the content at a node, you assess the student on that node, and all the other nodes update. So really, you can get a map of how much someone knows. So I would be interested to see if that type of learning network and that type of adaptive system can be merged with the
Okay.
large language model. So it seems as if kind of the learning network structure is there, and now we have an interface that kind of can talk in human language.
Yeah.
So I don't know, will you wake up and I'm going to go,
Yeah.
John, today is Tuesday. Today you have to
Yeah.
spend time on biology, and I want you to focus on this area because you haven't proven that you've known
Yeah.
it that well.
I think this is exactly what you have answered might be in the future, because we would want learning management system to be interacting with the user behavior, even more algorithms around learning analytics, so
Yeah.
that it can better distribute the right content to the right student at the right time. This is how we would anticipate that. I think we're coming to a close nearly. I would like to know, looking ahead, what do you think is the next big thing in the space of LMS development, if we even surpass AI or anything at all? Do you have any anticipation, or how do you think students would interact differently in the future?
I don't know. Like, again, I think like the big thing about AI is that it changes the interface of how you access knowledge. Are
Yeah.
you going to have 100 screens in 1,000 screens in Blackboard or Moodle? Or are you going to engage with the system that says, hi, Ansel, you're ahead on physics, but you're behind on chemistry. Today
Yeah.
we're going to look at covalent bonds. I'm going to tell you about something, then I'm going to test you about it. And then after that, we're going to revisit what we did yesterday. So, you can have a choice. You can read it, or you can listen to me talk about it, or I can generate a video or an audio to show you. Like, I'm talking futuristic stuff here.
Yeah.
But really, it's going to say, but John, I'm not going to show you a video because I know that your learning preference is not a video. I'm going to give it to you in text. So why don't you go away and read this, and I'll test you when you come back, and we'll update your learning network. So that's not the next big thing in LMS. I think that's way
Yeah.
down the road, but it is worth questioning. As Donald Clark says, if AI is the new UI, well then, our traditional UI is under pressure in LMSs to have more natural communication with and dialogue with information rather than just accessing it. Don't know if
Yeah.
that's the next big thing, but
I think you're one of those professionals who are very passionate about looking into the future, exploring technologies, or how a landscape can be impacted to enhance student learning experience. So, if we have to give one advice to educators or educational technologists, in particularly in this area working in education, and everything is influenced by AI so far, what would be your advice, and what would you suggest them?
I think at my heart I'm a scientist, and and in the world of AI now, you've got to question everything. If someone has shiny AI stuff in their product, don't be afraid to ask them, What prompts did you use? How does it work? What model does it use? Get to the root of it. I think there's a lot of magic stuff that can be under we have AI. I think you really need to ask, how does it work? How exactly does it work? Show me the engine. Because it is a quite opaque process. And I think for any learning technologists or faculty, just don't take a vendor's word for it. Get right to the root of it. How did you do it? What prompt did you use? What characteristics in the prompt do you use? Get to the bottom of it. And when you have an understanding, then it's easier. So I guess don't fall for the magic of some of these products. Actually, I suppose learning technologists and faculty, AI is everywhere, and we all have to get to a very basic understanding of it. And otherwise, you probably can't stand over it.
Yep, absolutely. I think you rightly mentioned that people need to be curious, be inquisitive about how it's evolving and how it's beneficial to them or the people around. Absolutely. And before we close, can you tell us where can listeners find you to know more about your work, the work your college is doing, or if they want to have any further discussion with you? I think we'll include the links in the description, but if you'll mention that, that'll be really helpful.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think it's John Lenehan 42, the answer to everything in the universe. And you can catch me hopefully on the Empowered webinar series. And I will provide my links, other contact details in the podcast description. But I'd say they're the best places.
Thank you so much, John. And that wraps up today's conversation on Unfiltered by Empowered. A huge thank you to you, John, for joining us and sharing your valuable insights on the future of digital learning and the use of AI, even we discussed around VLE particularly. It's clear that the landscape of education is transforming rapidly, and I hope today's discussion inspires our listeners to think creatively about their own educational practices. And thank you all to all our listeners for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay updated on all our latest episodes. Until next time, keep pushing your boundaries of education and stay unfiltered and curious. Thank you so much.